Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, August 7th, 2022, and today we're going to be talking about the 538 Senate forecast, which has shifted yet again in favor of the Democratic Party to a point where now 60% of chances in this forecast give the Democratic Party the chance at retaining control of the U.S. Senate. Now, 59 to 41 is a position that I could not even have imagined 4, 5, 6 months ago. Looking at the Senate map from the time in which Glenn Youngkin won the Virginia governorship in a state that Biden won by double digits, it seemed all but assured that the Republican Party was on track to gain seats in the U.S. Senate, and obviously win it through that. The Senate majority is 50-50. It's the narrowest we have seen in the 21st century, and it's one of the narrowest we have seen in U.S. history because, quite frankly, it is the narrowest that it can be for an incumbent party to have a majority. This 50-50 means that the Republican Party only needs one single seat in order to flip from the Democratic Party in order to win control, and yet they have just a 41% chance at doing just that. Now, this 59% is a combination of the Democratic Party being expected to retain 50 exact seats and being exactly where they have been for the past 2 years, continuing into 4. There's also the off chance that Democrats do gain seats in the U.S. Senate, which is contributing to the reason why Democrats have their numbers so high. Think about it this way. There is a good chance that Democrats do win 51 seats, and there's also a good chance that they win 50 seats. Those odds combined are better than the Republican Party's chances at flipping just one singular seat out of the 4 to 5 competitive ones that we have this election cycle. To give you a brief rundown of what we are expecting to see in terms of close and competitive races, we have the states of Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire as the states that are typically viewed as the swing and more competitive ones this election cycle. Realistically speaking, in terms of the ones that are actually going to be swing and super competitive, you have the states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and potentially New Hampshire. But that doesn't seem to be going in the right direction for the GOP, so for right now, we're going to leave it out. And most of the states that I mentioned are Democratic incumbent states, meaning that in a year such as this one, where President Biden is down double digits nationwide over 15 points in the net disapproval, it should be easy to see how some of these states, such as Arizona or Georgia, which went to Biden by less than half a point, would go to the GOP. But that simply isn't happening. What we are finding and what we are going to do in today's video is that we are going to go through some of these more individual states, see where the GOP is really lacking, and compare it to some previous Senate forecasts. Luckily for us, we can compare forecasts to the direct results in 2020, 2018, and also 2016, the last time that we saw, or the latest time that we see a very, very recently published model. I don't really want to dabble too much into 2012 and 2014, but I'm sure you can find that information online. I wasn't able to find the 2014 forecast on the internet. 2012 wouldn't load because of the Adobe Flash Player, and I also thought, going a decade past might be pushing it a little bit. We're talking post-Trump era, so we're going to head 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2022. And one thing that you might be able to notice is that in some cases, the Democratic Party was in the advantage and in the expectation to win control of the U.S. Senate. In 2016, they did not win control of the U.S. Senate, but they were expected to by 538. In 2018, 538 said Republicans had an 82% chance at winning control of the U.S. Senate and an average gain of about 1 seat. That's what happened. Republicans gained 2 seats, not 1, but still, the projection was correct. In 2020, they said the Democratic Party had an average gain of about 5 seats here, 4 to 5 seats. Democrats ended up gaining 3, won control of the U.S. Senate through the presidency with Vice President Kamala Harris, but the overall projection was correct. 2016 wasn't too lopsided, though. Democrats only had about a 51% chance of victory, meaning that it was truly a coin toss, and the coin tossed and landed against the Democratic Party in practically every single race that it mattered, but we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth when we actually take a look and see how the numbers have really changed over time. So to give you a bit of an understanding of where we are, I already told you about Biden's approval rating, but right now Democrats are up in the national generic ballot. I made a video talking about that yesterday. If you haven't seen that, I would suggest that you go ahead and watch it, because this is super important. The generic ballot really drives the direction and expectation for both political parties that we have across the United States. And for Democrats to now be leading after 9 consecutive months of being in the minority amongst the American public is significant. There clearly is some type of shift that has moved the American public to favor the Democratic Party more than Republicans, and we are starting to explore that now. But that isn't going to be the main focus. The main focus is going to be the Senate forecast. So let's go ahead and jump directly into what is driving these numbers so high and thus comparing it to 2020, 2018, and 2016 all throughout it. So let's go ahead and take a look. The first state I want to look at is starting on the West Coast for no particular reason. I'm just going to start from West Coast, moving over to the East Coast, because I think the East Coast probably actually, for a reason, if I was to give one, has some more interesting races. Nevada has Catherine Cortez Masto, who was first elected back in 2016 by a margin of 2.4%. Now, interestingly enough, 2.4% is a very, very cool margin in the state of Nevada. Hillary Clinton also won her election in Nevada by 2.4%, and Joe Biden also won by 2.4% in 2020. So it seems to be pretty standard and routine for Democrats to win by a narrow amount, but still consistently win in many of the elections. Just something to think about. Catherine Cortez Masto was replacing Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader for the Democratic Party, for a very long period of time, the Minority Leader when they did end up out of power after the 2014 midterms, but then he chose to retire in 2016. And with his retirement, his race became much more competitive and it became an open race. And now it's back to a Democratic incumbent against a pretty strong former Attorney General of the state, Adam Laxalt. Now, Adam Laxalt is one that I highly praise as one of the more electable Republicans that have been chosen as nominees across the entire country. There were definitely some wrong choices that could have been made in the state of Nevada, and there have definitely been some wrong choices that have been made. Actually, we will explore looking through the remainder of the states. But right now, Nevada actually remains as a true and total toss-up. Democrats have about a 57% chance of victory, but this is only a Biden +2 state. Realistically, it should be going to the GOP, and it isn't, because the Democratic Party is still able to hold on to their strength in a state that has voted blue, historically speaking, even in some blue wave years. In 2018 or 2020, Mark Kelly won the special election to replace John McCain, and that special election allowed Mark Kelly to serve through 2022. In this 2022 spot, he is now facing Blake Masters, the Republican nominee. This is a competitive race, no doubt about it. But Mark Kelly being at 68% definitely speaks to the unelectability and the inability for Blake Masters to go ahead and move into this campaign seat and try to win over voters in a very, very close and competitive state. I mean, the fact is, Mark Kelly as an incumbent, sure, might be able to take a lead, but it's a red wave year, and it's a state that Biden won by just 0.3%. But the Democrats are doing well here. That's contributing to the Democratic Party's overall numbers. In Colorado, a state that was competitive back in 2016, Michael Bennet has about a 90% chance at victory. That's very strong for the Democratic Party. Heading over to the state of Georgia, Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker are in a very, very competitive race, but taking a look at the chance at victory here, Raphael Warnock looks like he's on track to beat Herschel Walker in the November election, or potentially the December runoff. But the chances here are very interesting because Georgia should be such an easily winnable state for the GOP. Historically speaking, for the past few decades, they've had 2 Republican senators, constantly a Republican governor, and a Republican-controlled legislature for a very long period of time. Yet all of a sudden, 2020 comes around, Biden wins the state, Democrats win both Senate seats, and all of a sudden it's on track for a different trajectory in a red wave year. What's happening? It's candidate equality on both sides that elevate Democrats and deflate Republicans. Moving over to the state of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman is running against Dr. Oz. Yes, the TV personality Dr. Oz. If you didn't know, he's the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate. What you find here is that John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor of the state, is leading 66% to 34%. How is that happening? It happens because nominees aren't exactly going in the right direction for the GOP, and thus the Democrats become more electable and more likely in terms of their chances at victory. The interesting thing about Pennsylvania is that it's different from Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia in that there actually is a Republican incumbent in the state, thus driving the numbers up, meaning that Democrats on overall net are expected to pick up a seat through the state of Pennsylvania. That's what's contributing to this 59% number. So 59 to 41 is driven by these individual states: Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and you can also see it in the state of New Hampshire, a state that was the closest Senate election in the last cycle amongst this map, 2016, decided by 1,000 votes, 0.1% out of over 500,000 cast, and guess what? Maggie Hassan is expected to win this election by 6 points statewide. This is a red wave year. New Hampshire is one of the routinely most competitive states, had a Republican senator as recently as 2017, and guess what? 2 Democrats now lead and are expected to win full terms until 2026 as the next election in which Democrats will be up in the Senate elections in such a close and competitive state. Just something to think about. So these numbers are really giving the Democratic Party a very, very good showing for the upcoming midterms. I think that what we need to understand is that the Democratic Party played their cards correctly with getting their incumbents to run for re-election, and also the Democrats just simply lucked out because Republicans did not play their cards correctly in many of these primaries. But I will say that this inflation for Democrats is something that we have seen before, at least in some of the Senate forecasts that we've seen in the past. Sure, things look good for the Democratic Party as of right now, but what's stopping that from changing as we continue on? Almost all of the polls seem to indicate that Democrats are leading in Nevada, Georgia, Ohio, which I don't entirely believe, but I'll take a step back and not really focus on that one because I think it's a severely underpolled and over-expected Democratic vote share polled race. Arizona, Pennsylvania, and the reason why I don't think of Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada, because some of these numbers are a little bit more believable than a Trump +8 state going to the Democrats by 4 in a red wave year. But again, I don't like to argue too much with data, but the point being that practically all of these, top line polls that we are seeing here, the Democratic Party is doing well. And I think that is what is contributing to Democrats leading in this Senate forecast. But we have seen it before. We've seen Democrats with a heightened chance of victory in the past, and it goes all the way back to 2016 in the Senate election, which Democrats ended up with about a 51% chance of victory that translated to Republicans losing seats, net loss of 2, but still maintaining control. The Senate majority went to the Democratic Party in the 538 forecast very narrowly. It was expected to maybe go to the Democrats, and it was contingent on Hillary Clinton winning the presidency. We actually had this thought and actuality that a 50-50 map would actually be the result of our map here. Looking at the Senate forecast and how the odds have changed, take a look at the numbers around August 2016. This is the time frame that we are in now. Democrats at that point had a 71% chance at victory. This is why we don't discard the Republican Party's chances at victory in the U.S. Senate. At a different point in time, the Senate election might look very different than it did today. If you were to ask me based off the Senate forecast back in June, do Democrats have any chance at winning control of the Senate? I would have said yes, but it doesn't seem likely at all. Now it seems likelier than not. And that's the problem, I think, that we, really taking these forecasts too hard and saying that they're definitive and not going to change, they absolutely can. And I want us to really understand that. Because 71% in these odds before gave Democrats the chance at victory. That ended up being 51%, and what happened? Democrats ended up losing. Again, that 51% was largely including the numbers based off of the possibility that we would end up in a 50-50 tie. You take a look at New Hampshire, very close. You take a look at Nevada, very close. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania were the ones that were pretty far off, but they were actually expected to go to the Democrats more than the two states that actually did. Just something to think about. Looking at 2018, we also saw a very similar thing happen. Republicans always maintained the advantage in the U.S. Senate. There was never a time in which Democrats were expected to win it, but around the time of about early August, Republicans had about a 72% chance of victory at winning control or maintaining control of the U.S. Senate. Democrats had a 28% chance. That reduced down 10 percentage points down to 18% in the end of the November election. That's something to think about too. 82% from what was 72%, and at a low point for the GOP, 69%, 67% at different points, jumping up all the way to 82%. So the odds definitely do change over time. There is no doubting that. And based off of the seats controlled by each party, Republicans were expected to gain seats by the end of it. Maybe that wasn't the case. When you take a look at the numbers from August 2018, maybe it was expected to be 51-49 as it was following the Alabama special election, but that simply, again, was not the case. Looking at our Senate map and looking at our Senate forecast from 2018 versus the actual forecast here, no one said the Democrats were going to win the majority. I think I might have, and that was just a completely invalid and incorrect call, and I've definitely, taken responsibility for that more than once. But, looking at it, objectively speaking, I don't know why I made that characterization, but I do think that a lot of it, I think, looking at the numbers was rooted in the possibility that Democrats might be underestimated. And I think, looking at the 2018 House forecast in 538, Democrats were underestimated, but they definitely weren't in the U.S. Senate, and the results clearly reflected that. So looking at the forecast at face value, the Democrats were, technically speaking, overestimated by the forecast. But then again, the numbers looked a lot better for Democrats months leading up to, which means this forecast absolutely can change. In 2020, it was a bit different. Republicans actually had a higher chance around this time in August of 2020. Democrats started to expand it once we got closer to the November election, and we were able to watch this election from the outside, say, take a look at the Republicans and Democrats fight it down some of these races, get primaries finalized, vote by mail numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that was thrown into the 538 forecast, and by the end of it, it was correct. It did accurately predict the Democrats were going to win control of the Senate, did technically overestimate the amount of seats the Democrats were going to do so, but in terms of predicting the overall victor, considering how close it was, honestly, props to them, and I think that was a very good call on their part. But as you saw, the numbers at that point in August of 2020 were better for the GOP. So I don't know where we are looking at this map. I made a video yesterday, again, talking about the generic ballot and how I expect it to rebound potentially through November. But if from a month from now, 2 months from now, and we're getting into the October timeframe for the midterm elections and Republicans aren't rebounding in the way that I expect them to, I would say baseline expectations for them to have this red tsunami, this red wave year, is them being up in the generic ballot 3 points in the beginning of October. If they are not up by 3 points, and they've been up by more before, you can take a look at the generic ballot on Real Clear Politics 538, and you can find that at different points, the GOP was higher than a 3-point lead nationwide. If they aren't able to replicate that a month out before the election, then these numbers start to become more solidified. Democrats being at a 60% chance is one of the worst positions that the GOP can be in, and I think it definitely reflects negatively on them now. But what's to say that isn't going to change? Democrats should hope that it doesn't, because with time, they've seemed to advance their lead. Looking at this change over time, what was a 60% chance of victory for the GOP has reduced down to just 41%. That is a super significant reduction, and it definitely has everything to do with the Dobbs decision and also the candidates in these races. There's a reason why when Blake Masters was nominated, Mark Kelly's chances went up. There's a reason why when Dr. Oz was nominated, John Fetterman's chances went up. There is a reason why things happen, and a lot of it does come down to who was chosen and who was selected, and the Republicans truly only have themselves to blame for that. Again, it is expected to be a very good year for the GOP. This could entirely turn away from the Democratic Party, and I don't discount that. I don't think this race is over. I don't think the Senate majority is ultimately just gone for the GOP by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am saying that if the Senate elections were today, I would count on the Democratic Party maintaining control of the U.S. Senate. I can't say it would be large. I don't think that it would be 51 to 49, but what I do think is that our Senate map will be at least slightly different composed from where it was before. And also, these numbers are definitely the best the Democratic Party could have hoped for, and being at 60% 3 months out, less than that, before the election is still honestly a very good thing for the Democratic Party and something that they shouldn't get complacent with, but definitely should try to expand on. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election analysis forecast. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.